This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax, professional advice. We are not responsible for any losses or damages or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or management. This podcast may contain adult themes, so parental discretion is advised. Welcome to the Modern 32 Woman Unplugged podcast. Today I'm thrilled to welcome a truly remarkable guest who is reshaping the landscape of homeschooling. Her passion for education and lifelong learning goes beyond textbook. With a wealth of knowledge and a heart for service, she's here to share her insights on the homeschooling journey, tips for empowering teens, and how moms can thrive while educating their children at home. So, welcome to the podcast, an inspiring educator, support leader, and author, Tracy Bacon Huster.
Thank you. Thank you so
All
much for
right.
having me here.
So, Tracy, if you want to expound on your credentials at this point, you may go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the owner of Adulting University, and I am a bit of a nerd. So I have 4 different college degrees because I just couldn't stop with one. So I have all the way up through my master's degree. Have worked with youth for over 12 years in a variety of backgrounds. So I've worked in higher education, I've worked in career tech, I've also worked in industry. So I've done a lot of different things. When people look at my resume, it looks kind of crazy. It's all over the place, but it works really well for what I do with people. So
Right, that's good. That's good. That's
yeah.
awesome. All right. So, we're going to talk about some of the unique challenges you've noticed in teaching homeschool teens and how do you address them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the biggest challenges that families tend to see and that I see very common, especially across homeschool groups when I work with families, is kind of connection's a big one. Being able to, because I mean, not socialization, because that's a big one that's a misconception in homeschooling where, oh, kids aren't getting socialized. They're getting plenty socialized, but finding good friendships and connection with other teens is very, very challenging sometimes, especially for homeschool families who are maybe a little bit more in a remote area. They're not always super connected. Maybe there's not a co-op nearby or a place to get connected. And sometimes students can feel a little left out when they're on sports teams or other things with public school kids and they're not in that same space together. So that's one of the biggest challenges I see. And so the way I've actually kind of done that is a virtual co-op that I have. So I have a virtual co-op for homeschool families with teenagers. We have online clubs, we have meetups, hangouts, all kinds of places for teens to get that connection, because that is really one of the biggest areas that I see where homeschool families and the students kind of get frustrated or, defeated or whatever that might be when it comes to that space, being able to connect and find people that are like them that they can make friends with and have those relationships, right? That tends to be a little bit easier when you go to school to have those connections. And so when you're homeschooled, there is that challenge that I've seen a lot.
So, I just want to back up on something you said. So, you're saying that the the lack of being able to socialize and integrate with other students, that's a myth?
Yes, I think it's a huge myth. Yes.
Okay. Would you like to expand on that? Because from my experience with some of the students that do homeschooling, part of it that they're very what do you call it there? I don't want to find the correct word. They don't like to share. I can't figure out the word. They're very me oriented, me, myself and I oriented. So
That's very, yep. Okay. No, that's a great perspective and I think part of that, it's not so much a socialization, but they may be just, I mean, depending on the students and the families and that background, especially when you have single kids and you only have one child, that makes it a little more challenging for them to learn those skills, right? So socialization, though, I will tell you, majority of the time when I've had conversations with especially older homeschoolers, because that's who I primarily work with, I have a lot of really adult conversations with these students where they can have very high level conversations with you compared to their peers sometimes that are not homeschooled. And I think part of that is the way they're constantly interacting with adults throughout the day because they're working with their parents or instructors or tutors. So it is a little bit different in that sense. And they are out in the world a lot. They're out doing things, their field trips and all of those types of things. So I think it's a different type of socialization. So when I hear that people are like, oh, your kid's not going to get socialized, you think of a rabid animal that's not, oh, it doesn't know how to act around a human being. And it's like, that's not really the case in homeschooling. Like, students are still going to get socialized. Now they're going to be able to interact with other people, but like you said, sometimes there are those gaps that can happen where if they aren't used to, they never went to preschool and they never shared with other kids, there could be some of those skills. And that's part of that aspect of helping prepare their students for life after high school, making sure they have those kinds of skills that you do get from going to a physical school, which the co-ops and those types of models are really helpful for that. Clubs, sports, those types of things of getting kids involved. But as far as them not being able to talk to people or being like these introverted, strange people that don't know how to have like any kind of dialect with anybody else, I don't believe that's true. There are some kids that are in that space, but that's across the board, right? There are some kids who are very introverted, who are very terrified to talk with people, whether they're homeschooled or public schooled. So I feel like that is just more a character trait. It's not because of being homeschooled, if that makes sense.
All right. Yes. Yes. Point taken. So how do you tailor your teaching methods to meet the diverse needs of homeschoolers?
Yes. And so that's a big challenge, especially because there are so many different learning styles. And that is one big thing in the homeschool world where there's a lot of customization that happens in that space. And so for me personally, I take a very different approach because I don't like to be your traditional teacher. I don't want to just lecture at you and move on with your day. So I try to make things very interactive for students. I try to bring as much real world stuff into the classroom as I can, whether it's we're doing scenarios or we're doing a group activity together or role playing or having them do a scavenger hunt or something of that nature where they're really just getting involved. One of the pieces I'm working on implementing right now in our entrepreneurship class, for example, is going to be a kind of like a murder mystery type of experience for them to go through as they develop their business plan. So it's kind of like, hey, you got to go through this space of navigating and figuring out who done it. And really it's going to be more on like, how do you find your target audience? Like, it's uncovering all these pieces and finding that murder mystery and finding out who did it, who's that right person. So being able to really just bring an engaging piece into that community, because it's hard enough learning online virtually. So if you don't have a good engagement there, it makes it a lot more challenging.
Yeah, that is true. Even myself as an adult, when I had to do some online courses for job related online courses, it's very hard to concentrate. You're there by yourself, and
Yes. Yes.
there's nobody to ask anything. You're just there by yourself, and yeah, I like. For me personally to learn, I prefer to be in a classroom environment, because sometimes the tutor might say something and you don't really understand, and you ask somebody else and you say, oh, that's what you meant,
Yep. Yep.
I suppose.
Exactly. Yes, there's a
Yeah.
lot of power behind being in a group with other people and having different
Yes.
inputs and different perspectives on things. I love that model. That's why I like the classroom piece of like, let's bring everybody together versus individual.
Yes, yes, yes. And with the advent of so much persons working remotely, also, what I've noticed is that when persons come on to join a company and have to be trained, it's hard. Basically, the same sort of scenario where um, if you're in an office together and somebody shows you something and you don't understand, you can just walk over to somebody else's desk and say, Sarah showed me this, but I think I'm missing something, and the person walk you back through the same thing, and there's one piece that is missing, and you're able to, as opposed to sitting there with it 3 4 days trying to figure out what.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so we find it in the workplace also.
Mm-hmm.
So in your experience, what are the key skills homeschool teens need to develop for life beyond high school?
Yes, that's a great question. And it's something where the list is very, very long, but when we narrow it down to like
Yeah,
those
yeah.
critical skills, which
Mm-hmm.
actually is what my book is all about. And it's all about those essential skills that teens really need to know when they leave high school. And so, number one is communication. Teens have to know how to communicate effectively with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is knowing how they communicate. So, one of the biggest areas we help in with students in our classes, we do communication assessments and help them figure out what their actual communication style is, and understanding, dialect, understanding body language, like just being able to actually present and put themselves, how they want other people to really see who they are. The second one is emotional intelligence, because I don't know about you, but in this season that we're in right now of life and all the things going on, there's just so much drama out there, and there's so many adults that are acting like children all the time because they don't have a high emotional intelligence. They don't know how to manage their emotions. They get triggered by everything. They get offended by everything. And if we can teach our teens how to have that higher level of emotional intelligence, they're going to be so much better off in life, and being able to not take everything personally, being able to, you know, put their best foot forward and know who they are, being able to process their emotions in a healthy way. And that's something I think so many people are lacking. So I think those foundational pieces. And then we look more into the practical skills. So helping financial literacy is a big one, right? There's a huge gap right now in our world where with finances, and that financial literacy of students knowing about money, knowing about investing, how to budget, all those things. So having that skill set. And then I would say another big one is just independence in general. So having students know how to actually live and be on their own without mom and dad there. Unfortunately, I've seen a huge shift, and research backs this up, where families are overcompensating and kind of doing anything and everything for their kids. And it's really caused quite a big issue with our upcoming generations of them being self sufficient. They don't know how to problem solve. They don't know how to think critically. They really struggle with being able to figure things out or go through hardship. That resilience really isn't there a lot of the time anymore, because they've kind of been handed and taking care of everything and put in a bubble. Because, and it's all done out of love, right? We all know, like, as a parent, you don't want your kid to, experience hurt. You don't want your kid to struggle or any of these things. So we, as parents, have kind of overcompensated, and it's kind of created a generation of students that are really not in a good place when it comes to them being adults and in the workforce and everything like that. So being able to teach them those critical skills is so important for them to be successful.
I agree with you 100% there because, um, as you say, when these teenagers come into the workforce, that is when you see the immaturity. They, they, when you correct them, they behave as if it's a criticism. It's not a criticism
Mm-hmm.
about you. Is that you have a task that needs to be done, and we're telling you this is a better way for you to achieve it. If you follow these particular processes, but they get offended, and they, so they just don't want anybody to correct them. I don't know. It's just mind-boggling, and I applaud you with the financial part of it, because a lot of people, they earn six-figure salary and they don't know how to manage money.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody probably earning $50,000 or $60,000 a year probably save more than them, because they
Yep.
just spend. There's no saving. Yeah, I think that's a key thing for them to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So
Absolutely.
some very good points there for them to. And I want to also address what you said about the we're pampering them and powdering them up and wrapping them up like in swaddling, like, like babies. But the long and short of it is that the world is a hard place out there. It's a hard
Mm-hmm.
place. It's a
Mm-hmm.
hard place to be.
Yep.
So we can't protect them. I think when you allow them to go out there and feel what they need to feel, and sometimes you know just just experience life, because you can't look at how you try to protect your child. There's always something that's going to be out there in
Mm-hmm.
the work, especially in the work world, that they're going to have to accomplish. As you always, as you say, also all of us as we come up, we don't want our children to go through the hard life that we went through. I
Mm-hmm.
personally feel that each generation is supposed to be better than the last.
Mm-hmm.
That's my philosophy. But at the same time, they need to have proper coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have disappointments. You're gonna have
Yep.
things happening to you. So yeah,
Yep.
I like that. I like what you're saying about what you're teaching. I think that's very, very, very good stuff there. So can you share a success story of one of your homeschool teens who has made a smooth transition into college or to into a career? You have any
Yeah,
success story
absolutely.
that yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had a couple of students I've worked with that were kind of in that space of graduating. A lot of the students that are kind of coming up through the ranks now are actually on the younger side, which is really interesting. So a lot more middle schoolers. So it'll be a minute before I have their after high school success stories, but I've had a few that I've worked with. Actually, one recently I had a student who on the college side. So there was a college who was going to go to a traditional 4-year college. And
Mhm.
we really started working together on that of like navigating, is this really the best option? She didn't get the scholarship money she was hoping for. I was working with her mom a lot and just had that reality of, it's not a bad thing to say, I can always go there later. Let's look at community college for now. I'd rather stay at home locally. I have this scholarship. It'll easily cover my tuition at this option here, and she's really thriving now. And I know just with how her personality is and everything, I think she would really have been struggling if she would have went off to that 4-year school far away from home. And it just would have been a whole different ballgame, and she probably would have ended up back home anyways, like many students do. So that was a really nice thing of her being able to just see those relevancies. And again, her mom and I worked a ton together through this process and helped navigate, how do you make those decisions and how do you have those conversations, and helping her look and kind of weigh both options. And then she made that decision all on her own, which is a really big deal because so many students get very, I wouldn't say insecure, but they have that shame or, oh, I'm going to let my parents down if I make that decision. If I don't go to this school, or if I don't go to college, or I don't follow mom and dad's plan for me, I'm going to disappoint them and let them down. So I'm going to do it because I don't want to disappoint them. And then the student ends up really unhappy. And part of that whole process of learning how to be an adult is having healthy boundaries and being able to stand up for yourself, even if it's to your parents, in a very respectful way, of course, but being able to have those conversations saying, hey, mom, dad, I really don't think this is the best option for me. And being able to come and explain that in having that very adult conversation. And they've been able to really go through that. And her dad was not the biggest fan of this. Her mom has always been very supportive, but the dad was kind of like, oh, but I was really excited about you going there. But he came around, like when she actually explained, like, hey, I get it, but here's why. And now he sees her happy and kind of navigating this process in a much better place mentally and everything else. Like he is now like, okay, I get it. This was a good thing. But just those kinds of, I think, stories of being old students being able to see that, oh man, I can follow what my heart is saying, what my brain is saying, and have those conversations in a mature and respectful way by being able to communicate properly with that person. So just being able to work through those life skills is I love seeing that happen when those students can have those conversations with mom and dad.
I like the idea and the advice that they gave her about doing going to the community college. A lot of people frown at it, but it saves a ton of money
Mm-hmm.
going there to get some of the basic in, and then as you correctly say, they have an opportunity to be at home a little longer before they move on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
that's good. I like that. So how do you balance? What strategies do you use to keep teens motivated and engaged in the learning journey? I remember you said that you have a community. So if you want to expound on that, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So part of the way we do that is just with, I mean, like any teenager, they get motivated when there's something to gain out of it for them. So we do a lot of gamification in our programs. So having them compete for things, whether it's just for like the title of being the winner, or they get a gift card or like a prize. So being able to have them kind of make it like a friendly competition in some aspects, really being able to like showcase them in things and doing things that they enjoy. So for example, this past week in our career exploration course, we did vision boards with the students. And so instead of having them, and it was really fun. So I have this great online tool I use, and I showed them how to use it. And we sat there and created vision boards together, and I had them share their screen and tell me all about their vision board, and just brought them into the process. And you could tell they just like were really excited about it. And I was like, hey, I'm going to screenshot your guys' vision boards and I'm going to post them on social media. And they're like, okay, it's just those things of like bringing them into the conversation, getting them engaged, having them kind of not just talking at them, bringing them into the conversation, but then those fun rewards and things too, like gamification. Yeah. Again, at the end of the day, and I tell parents this all the time, at the end of the day, it's up to the student. I cannot do it for them. I cannot make them do the things. I can show them the tools, give them the tools, but at the end of the day, it's up to them to use and implement it. I do the best I can to help them at least practice it together, but then what they take and run with, that's on them. And I think that's a big piece sometimes that families forget about. We want it more. Sometimes we want it more than our kids do. Right. And unfortunately, we can't do that. I mean, I would love for every student to come out of our programs, our co-op, and have the best adult life and be able to do all these things that we're teaching to like 100%, but that's not realistic. But the reality is they have the tools now that they didn't have before. And so they can pull them out of their toolbox as they need them. And so someday, even if they're 30 years old, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I remember in that class, that Tracy lady said something about this, and now it's sparking it in my brain. And so I think that sometimes too, sometimes we're just planting seeds and they're not ready to implement and manage the things, but we're giving them those tools so that when they are ready, it's there for them.
Yeah, that's good. And I like the vision board. I use vision boards also as an adult here. Yeah.
Yep. They're
very
fun. They're so fun.
Yes,
and I gave the parents the activity of doing like the old school vision board. I'm like, hey, get you a poster board, get some magazines, like go to town. Stuff is fun.
I feel like I should be in your class. A lot of fun going on there.
I've had a lot of adults say that. They're like, can I take your classes?
Yeah. What inspired you to start offering support specifically to the homeschool moms? What was going on there where you felt that you had to carve out something for them?
Yes, absolutely. So part of when I first started business, it was like, I just want to help youth regardless, right? I want to help teenagers, young adults of any background, of any place. And as it goes in business, that makes it really, really hard because you can't talk to all the people. And so I really struggled in the beginning of getting things to really resonate because I was talking to the wrong audience. I had the product that was great for homeschoolers, but I was talking to public school kids and being able to try to get into schools to implement courses and curriculum. And it is a very, very challenging thing to do. And in the last couple of years, I just kept feeling this pull and stuff kept happening. I went to a homeschooling convention. I had this homeschool thing pop up, this homeschool thing pop up. And so all this stuff kind of kept like leading me down that path. Like, hey, you probably should go work with homeschoolers. And so as part of that, that's what I started to do is niche down. And as part of my strategy, I was like, I know how engaged homeschool moms are with their students, how much they want to be able to teach their kids all this stuff, but I don't want them to feel like they have to do it all on their own. And so I wanted to provide that as a big resource in our program. So all of our programs include a huge component of parent support. I mean, I create handouts every single week for our classes that go to the parents. Like, here's stuff you can be doing at home with your student. Here's what we're learning this week. They get weekly updates. I do live Q&As with parents. So there's a lot of parent support that goes into our programs because I want it to be full circle. I don't want it to be, hey, send me your kids and I'll help prepare them for life. Like, no, let's partner together and get your kid prepared for life. And here's how I can support you because you may not be a financial coach like I am or a career coach. So let me take that role and then I can give you things to do at home as well to continue the learning journey.
So you teach all the subjects, or you have persons that you subcontract to that help you?
Yes, great question. So right
Mhm.
now it is primarily me that teaches most of our classes. I do have a car maintenance portion that gets taught by a certified mechanic. So I have that as an instructor I do contract with, and he is been in this field for a very long time. And so he teaches our basic car maintenance program. But otherwise it has been primarily me. So I am working on expanding. I actually am in conversations with a lady right now who's going to start running a culinary class and a cooking class. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to be hopefully rolling that out in the next, probably in springtime potentially. So yeah, definitely the horizon to grow more classes. Right now we have 6 full classes that we teach. And right now I'm the one that teaches all of those.
So basically, the students come online and you teach them for what, an hour, the particular subject.
Yep,
Okay.
usually about an hour. It's typically what our class times are. And I do it in a hybrid capacity too. So I have them do like little mini trainings and like watch some other videos, do other activities prior to our live course. And then when we come together, I like to use that time for actual implementation. So that's where we actually take the time to do the stuff that we've been learning all week and get hands on. So that's when we do our scenarios or our group work and really getting interactive in the process. So that way they don't have to just sit there and listen to me talk the entire hour. They can already listen to all the stuff, got the training, and now let's get to work on doing the things.
So what strategies do you recommend for homeschool mom to manage their time effectively? Because they they're helping with the schooling there. I um I remember when my grandson did homeschooling, and he needed help with some form of maths, and I was doing it, and he says, "No, grandma, that's not how it is done." And he showed me another way, and I'm like, I didn't know that could get the answer by doing that. It was much quicker. But if you ask me what he did, I don't know. So things are changing so much from what when we used to go to school and what is being taught now. So how
Mm-hmm.
do they help? How can the moms really help them with the schoolwork other than supervising them to make sure that they do it?
Yes, I think the accountability piece is really big, especially if the parent isn't wanting to teach all this stuff. Like if you're outsourcing the teaching basically, like, hey, we bought this program, you're going to learn the program. I think the accountability piece is huge for the on the parent side of how can we make sure, especially when your kid's still younger or they're in that, preteen, early teen years, the motivation is not super high. And especially even as teenagers, sometimes the motivation isn't always great. So helping develop some sort of reward system or helping your teen learn how to manage their time and how to build a schedule that works for them. I think that's something that parents can really step in and do that makes a huge difference for their students. And it's a supportive environment, creating that area of support, not haggling them all the time. I think that's not going to get you anywhere if you're constantly on them about doing their homework, doing their schoolwork. It's finding what works for both of you, but having accountability, saying, hey, you know what? Your curriculum's due by the end of the week. If you don't get it done, here's the consequence. Like it's simple as that. It's just cut and dry. And it doesn't have to have any emotion behind it. No screaming needs to happen. No yelling needs to happen. It's setting the precedent up front, saying, hey, you don't do your schoolwork. Here's the consequence for that. Oh, you were going to go to your friends this weekend. You're not going to go to your friends if you don't get your schoolwork done. Being able to just be clear about it and just following through. I see that happen a lot. That is probably one of the biggest areas I see, especially in homeschool groups I'm part of on Facebook. I'm part of probably like 50 of them. And one of the biggest areas I see moms come complain about with their teenagers specifically is they don't respect me, they're not listening to me, they're not doing what I've asked them to do. And the reality is when you dig into it, more times than not, it's because the mom hasn't been consistent. She hasn't followed through with her word. It was warning after warning after warning, but no action ever was taken.
They call
And
that bluff.
yeah, and the reality is teens are going to walk right over that. They're not
Oh
going to
yes,
care. Like they could be the best kid in the world and they're still going to take advantage of you if you're just letting them
yes,
get away with things.
yes,
So you
yes.
have to have that. You have to still be the parent. And I know this has been again with what we talked about earlier of not, treating our kids in this like bubble situation, well, where you want to be their friends. And yes, that's great to have a good relationship with your kid. And I 100% encourage that. But at the end of the day, you're still the parents. and we have to still be a parent with our kids, which means there are consequences. There are things that happen, and we do have to follow through. And yeah, sometimes it's hard and it makes you sad when your kid's having a breakdown and they're just hysterical because they didn't get that movie or they didn't get to play the game or see their friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, but next time they're going to remember that and they're going to know mom ain't messing around. She's going to stick to her word. So being accountable to your kids, but being consistent with what you're doing and helping them learn consistency, because that is the one thing in the homeschool world I see a lot with, especially with schedules. There's not always a lot of consistency and it's kind of all over the place. And you're really not setting your kid up for success. You know, you can't do that in a work environment. You can't do that when you have a family and you're juggling employment. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to work when I want to work and I'm going to sleep in and, oh, you know, my schedule's going to vary every day. Like, that's not good. And for teenagers, that's not good for them to get that motivation either. They need consistency. What time am I getting up every morning? What time are we starting schoolwork every day? Like, that needs to be the same and be consistent, especially with kids with learning disabilities and other things. That consistency, that schedule goes a long way with them.
So there seems to be a lot of stress on the parents. So do you speak to the parents about self-care for themselves? Because they can get overwhelmed and feel that, you know,
Yes.
that they don't have time to get their nails done. They don't have time to get their hair done. I mean, I need to take care of this child, make sure they do what they're supposed to do. So self-care. Do you speak to
yes.
yeah.
And part of what we do is self-care in the sense of is our community that we have for parents. So in our co-op, we have a virtual meetups for the parents too. So it's kind of like a parent support group, if you will, where parents can get together. They have time together. They can bounce ideas off each other, support each other in that space. But then we also bring in guest speakers once a month on different trainings and different things, whether it's a homeschool resource or, hey, mom, here's a resource to help you. So being able to provide them some of that as well, that's specifically for them and their journey, that again goes a long way, because especially for homeschoolers, whether you're the mom homeschooling, the dad homeschooling, there is burnout that can happen. It is a lot. I mean, I see that a lot with the families where they're like, I have no time for myself. All I'm doing is teaching or working with the kids, and I'm never, you don't get that. And so it's important to make that time for yourself too. Even if it is just jumping on a group with other parents and having a session of whining and complaining for a minute and then getting off, sometimes that's a good release,
right,
to be able to kind of move on with your day.
So what advice does your book provide for homeschool moms who are anxious about their teens' future?
Yes. So our book, it's called Adulting Unplugged, and it literally has every chapter is focused on a specific life skill that we are basically teaching moms how to implement that with their kids. So we talk about, okay, let's talk about communication, and let's talk about how can you improve your communication with your teenager. Here are some very practical things you can do at home to do that. And the book comes with a workbook as well, where it gives them actual activities and spaces to write, to do things. So it like even expands more on them being able to implement it at home. And then our last chapter in the book is a bunch of resources that are there to help them, whether it's free resources, paid resources, but just a variety of things that they can go to get that support. But that's how the book is structured, to really just give them practical tools that they can use right now to help their kiddos.
So you help them also with college application and career planning?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So our three main areas that we do is career exploration and career readiness, life skills, and then that college planning piece. So we do all three of those at Adulting University to really just kind of help them in that whole full circle of those next steps after high school.
Okay, that's very good. I really love what you're doing. I think we're gonna have some very well-rounded adults when you finish with them.
Yes, that is the plan. That's the
plan.
goal.
So, how do you hope your book will impact the homeschooling community?
Yes, I'm hoping that it creates a community in itself. So everybody who buys our book is actually going to get access to a private Facebook group as well that just continues that learning journey for them, because I want it to not just end with the book. I want them to have a place to go. They can talk to other moms, they can get support. We're going to do, bring trainings and all the things, just because I think it's so important to, especially with books. Like, I love to read, and I've read a ton of like business books and professional development books and all those things. But the challenge is, if you put the book down, life still goes on. So how are we going to keep remembering the things that we learned in the book and implementing those things? So I wanted it to be kind of full circle. But the goal for it really is to just help empower moms that have teenagers or preteens on knowing the skills and knowing how to teach the skills that their kiddo needs before they leave home. Because I mean, sometimes it's scary to be like, oh my gosh, what are all the things? Like, there's so much to do. And sometimes we're so focused on the curriculum of them getting their math credits and their English credits that we forget about these things that are really going to set them up for lifelong success.
Right. I remember when I tried to get you onto the podcast show here. You were so busy. You were writing your book, you were teaching, and you were supporting all these moms. So how do you balance? How do you balance the demands of writing the book and teaching and supporting these moms? How do you manage with all of
Yes.
that? And your mom, right? Your mom
Yes,
also.
I'm
You
a
said
mom
that.
as well. Yes, I have
Yeah.
I
So
have a preteen, and then I also have a baby. She's a toddler, but yeah, so it is
okay. So there you
lots of
go.
juggling that happens in our world. So the nice thing is I have a really great support system, and that helps a lot. So my husband's awesome. He works from home too, so he helps a ton with our littlest one while I'm teaching and doing all the things. My mom and dad live down the road, so they're also very, very supportive on things. But
Okay.
the other aspect is, I tell people I live by my calendar and I live by systems. So I have on my business side, I have automated so many things, like welcome emails, like onboarding, all the stuff. I've automated as much as I can, because I needed to take me out of that process so that I could actually work with the families. And a lot of the stuff I do is group focused, which is nice too. So I can help
Right.
more families at one time. So but I live by my calendar. I joke with people. I'm like, if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to
It
happen,
didn't
and it
happen.
doesn't exist.
But I do say, if it isn't, if what Sarbanes Oxley, one of those things, I just remember, and I said, if it isn't written, it didn't happen.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's what I tell people. I mean, even with writing my book, I had to actually put on my calendar times to go write and say, okay, here's what I'm doing, at like setting it down like it's a meeting, because
Yes.
to juggle all the things, that's the
Mm-hmm.
easiest way to do it, is just to keep myself accountable, is to have it on my calendar. And I live by my calendar. I check it multiple times throughout the day, make sure I'm not missing anything. I have reminders set up for everything.
Yes.
And I have project management tools that I use as well to manage all the projects and the multiple moving pieces going on. And honestly, I utilize what I teach when I teach time management to students in our adulting class. I'm like, here's the system. Here's how this works. You got to figure out these parts and pieces, and there's different varieties. You find what works for you. But at the end of the day, you've got to find a way to manage your time, prioritize the things that got to get done, and make it work around the other things that are important in your life. So being able to kind of help navigate that.
That is so true. I'm an early riser, so normally my day starts sometime at 3. I do my devotion, and then the end of the other part of it is going through my emails, look for the the low hanging fruits, things that can be done quickly, and just get all that sorted out. I also do my podcast and stuff at that time also. So sometimes people get in a 3 o'clock email, but hey, if I don't send it, it ain't gonna happen.
Yep, that's
So
fair.
yes. So I you know what happened? I noticed also, which I try not to do anymore. After I do my devotion, I start to look at the phone, and then I say, "Oh, something," and then I find myself there for an hour, and I have done anything. So I leave the phone for the last thing to look at.
Yep.
If you make it the first thing after you do the devotion, you're going to spend an hour there, because there's always something there that you
Yep.
want to read, and that is where so I find my time getting consumed if I don't follow the plan, which is
Yep.
yeah, the thing in a structured manner. So I
Yes.
understand where you're coming from too with that.
Yep. Well, and it's also building because, like, I mean, since some people struggle with the plan, but the reality is, if you have a plan and you follow it, you're going to be in good shape. But make sure you're building in the fun too, not just all the to dos
Right,
and all this stuff. Make sure you're building, like, hey, family time or game night or whatever it is, because
right.
that really is how you juggle time. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to manage it just like you manage money or anything else. You have to manage your time because you only got so much of it.
Yes, time is so precious.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question. Oh, the time went so quickly. What are your future plans for your work in homeschooling after the book is published? What is your future plan for homeschooling?
Yes, so great question. And I'm not 100% sure on what's coming after the book. I know I'm in the process of launching our virtual co-op right now. It's a very robust program, and it's so that one I'm kind of simultaneously doing as I wrap up the launch of the book. And so yeah, so it's kind of just really getting that running, and I think once the co-op is fully up to what I want it to be, it's just going to be scaling it at that point, being able to expand, to be able to bring in more team members to help more and more homeschool families. Like, I have this vision of this co-op being this go-to place for homeschool teens to get all the things that they need to be ready for life after high school, and to have that community that they can really get support from. So we're going to have a mentorship program for our high school juniors and seniors that'll be part of this program. There'll be study groups and clubs and all these things that I want this to be the place teens want to go and hang out and actually enjoy learning and not feel like, oh, another class that my mom's making me take. So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt thank to you, Tracy. Thank you for being such an incredible guest. And it's clear that the impact you're making goes far beyond the classroom. It's transforming lives and building stronger, more resilient families. Thank you again for joining us. And at this point, if you want to tell our listeners how to get in touch with you and your book, that information, we can also send it to me and I'll put it in the podcast notes also.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm happy to do that. I will be happy to share the landing page for our book. And the best place to connect with me is going to be on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on Facebook with the groups that I run. And it's just the Tracy Bacon Huster. And I can send you that link as well for the show notes and
Right.
my website as well, which is just adulting-university.com. So you can contact us there. You can schedule a meeting with me there, all the good stuff.
All right. Thank you again, Tracy. We are looking forward to seeing all the great things you'll be accomplishing in the future. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.